Hello y'all, I am back again for another video. And this video is going to be about your mental problem and the narcissist or narcissistic people. And you got to tune into this video, y'all, because I'm not going to be talking about the mental problem that you think I'm speaking of. I'm not going to be talking about mental disorders that's in the DSM-5 or any of the mental health books that diagnose major mental health issues. None of those, y'all. I will touch on that, but like I said, you got to stay tuned in because I'm going to describe to you another mental disorder that people are not diagnosed with. And I'll tell you what that is right now. It's a mental disorder that won't be listed in the DSM. Okay, if you're empathic, they don't have a mental disorder called too nicey empath disorder. And I learned this through just recognizing this. It dawned on me within the last 2 to 3 years. Right after I started this channel, and I thought about this. I said, wow, I thought about all the mental health disorders, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder. There's so many. Narcissism is one. Antisocial personality, bipolar, whatever they say, we have. Just whatever. And you know, it's almost, if you go to a therapist and the right therapist, especially a legitimate psychiatrist or psychologist, because a lot of people can't actually diagnose you with anything because they don't have the credentials to diagnose you and put it on paper. So if you go to like a state facility where they actually have legitimate psychiatrists and psychologists, and I think that's the best place to go. I do. I think the top psychiatrists and psychologists are in state-ran facilities. And that doesn't mean you have to be in the institution. I'm not talking about being in a mental institution, but anything that's kind of governed by the state. And a lot of times, no matter what your insurance is, it's just like you got the state hospitals, the trauma centers. Those are the best surgeons. If someone was to get shot in the head, where do they go? Normally, in most states, they go to a state hospital. You can be airlifted in and things like that. So a lot of times your local hospital cannot handle those issues. So I'm just giving you an example. So if you go to like some of these counseling services and things like that, they can maybe say, okay, you have mild depression. But anything outside of that, as far as, you know, more major disorders, they won't be able to tell somebody that they are a narcissist or a psychopath or anything like that, or they have sociopathy, they're a sociopath. So you're never going to go to a therapist and they're going to diagnose you with Miss Nice disorder or Mr. Nice disorder. Now, they may mention to you in therapy that you're overdoing the niceness. I noticed that you're taking too much of the blame for things. And this was something that I was told in therapy back in, 2012 when I was in therapy. This sister mentioned to me, she said, you take a lot of the blame for stuff. So she noticed that I actually blame shifted, but like narcissists blame shift, but they blame it on other people. So like with the psychopath in Texas, when he was cussing me out and arguing with me and name calling, he blamed all of his relatives' problems on me. So I'm not talking about how narcissists blame shift. I'm talking about how empathic people blame shift. So when I was in therapy in 2012, the therapist noticed that I took all the blame and I did not put any of the blame on the narcissist. So even though she can't diagnose me with being too nice mental disorder, It is a mental problem. So now you see where this video is going. So your mental disorder and the narcissist. So I uploaded several videos about living in a spiritual warfare. It was a video request and it ended up being 4 videos. And you got to go watch those videos. I mentioned in the videos that I had a situation where I referred to my sister as real sis. Okay. And she asked me, why was I doing it? I told her, I just wanted to basically, you are my real sister. I thought it was a cute little nickname or whatever. I told her a couple of nice reasons of why I called her that. Out of respect, I began to call her by her first name. So instead of calling her by her first name, she has like a nickname. So say your name is like Kiana and people call you Kina. Okay, it's kind of like that. So I'm gonna just give you something that's close to it without exploiting her name or whatever, or saying what her name is. So um, I have called her, just say it's Kiana before, if that's what it is. I've called her that, but I don't do it as often. I do mainly call her by the nickname, which is Kina. But I felt like since she said something about the real sis thing, that hey, I don't know, maybe she don't want to be called no nickname. And so I'll just call her Kiana. I mean, I do call her that sometimes. So guess what happened, y'all? I called her by her first name and she asked me to stop calling her that. So I mentioned to her, I said, well, when I called you real sis not too long ago, you didn't like that. Now I'm actually addressing you by your birth name and you don't like that. Like, what do I call you? So basically she said, well, I never call her by her first name. I said, well, I actually do, but I more so call you by the nickname or the short version of her name. It's not like a nickname, for real nickname. It's like the short version, like say the name Kenny. If someone called a Kenny Ken or a Kenneth Ken, something like that, or a Michael, if a Michael's called Mike. So it's not like a nickname, it's just a shortened version of her name. So she mentioned that another friend of hers calls her by her first name. I said, well, so you're okay with someone that's not your sister calling you by your first name? She can call you by your first name, but you're telling me I can't, and I'm actually your blood sister. This is what I said to her. So when she said, also that I never call her by her first name, and I explained to her why. I said, I called you that because I was trying to respect you, because when you told me not to call you real sis, and you told me about that, I just wanted to make sure I wasn't doing anything wrong with you, not using no nicknames or anything. I just want to be on the right page with you. And I mean that, y'all. And what she's doing is fucking with me, y'all. It's just mean behavior. But see, this is the thing. So this would be the mental problem. Okay, so when you're trying to figure things out and properly communicating with people to get it resolved, because that's what empaths do. We want to resolve it. In our soul, we don't want to offend nobody. That's not our nature. So since she told me not to call her real sis, then I called her by her name, right? So anybody with logic would do this. And let me read this again because I mentioned in another video about logic. What is logic in thinking? The logical thinking definition is analyzing a situation or problem using reason and coming up with potential solutions. Logical thinkers gather all the information they can, assess the facts, and then methodically decide the best way to move forward. Okay, so that's what you're doing. And this is something I'm going to be using a lot of. I want you to use a lot of. And it's going to save you and me. Because when you do this, you will not have the mental problem. You won't have that mental disorder. I'm not talking about the one they diagnosed you with because you was with narcissists and sociopaths and psychopaths, or you interacted with them in your family. I'm not talking about the one, the anxiety and the stress disorder and the narcissistic ways that you develop. I'm not talking about that mental problem that the psychiatrist diagnose you with. I'm talking about the other one that they can't diagnose you with. The other one. So I'm going to describe to you what this is and how it would work. So basically, another thing, there's a such thing as people giving you a hard time. So what she's doing, in a way, when someone does this to you, this is when you don't have a mental problem. This is how you should look at this, especially with relatives. And this is why so many people disown their relatives. This is why people die and they own parents and siblings don't show up at their freaking funerals. This is why a lot of people die, and sometimes it's so bad where somebody don't even claim their bodies. They're left in morgues with nobody to claim them. The morgue cremates their asses. This is the result of being an asshole. So what my biological sister is doing is being an asshole. And she's showing disdain and dislike for me. However, I'm going to navigate you through how this is going to work, my plan, and how I don't have a mental problem. So, okay. So it's escalated. She doesn't want me calling her real sis. She doesn't want me to call her by her first name. The first name my mother named her. So my mama and her mama named her first name. Okay. So she's actually telling her mother's other daughter, which is me, not to call her by her first name, while she's saying that in some sense it's okay that this other lady, this a non-blood relative, calls her that. Because she pointed out, well, that's something that particular person calls her all the time. And I get it, because my ex narcissist, he calls me by my middle name. He does not even use my first name. And however, if somebody else used my middle name or whatever, I'm not going to tell them, well, only he does that or whatever. My middle name is my middle name. Okay. And he's the only person that regularly calls me that. But at a couple of my jobs, my name tag even had my middle name. And everyone at that job, those two jobs, called me by my middle name. So with this situation with my biological sister, it's escalating. So you gotta, and she's going through some stuff, y'all. She got issues with work, home life. There's a couple of issues. There's stress. But see, this is where y'all have this mental problem, and I could have it too. See, you focus too much on what other people going through instead of yourself. Now, my relative and her relative, we just both saw her in a casket. Okay. So I'm a closer relative to the relative that passed than my sister is, as far as like family relations. Okay. And you know, and there's some grieving that's going on. However, I explained in the other videos how logic is not anger. And I got the sad management playlist, emotional survival tips playlist, and then this video. So this is going to be under probably sad management and emotional survival tips. I'm going to add this video to that so you can know how to navigate and get through these situations. So a lot of times people that have mental problems in these type of situations, they keep thinking with empathy. Okay. and they a lot of times get hurt behind these situations. Now, karma's something else. So I'm gonna tell you how the universe works. So this is how it works. So we were on this phone call because I had sent this message in Messenger because myself and my son, we just kind of had some concerns. We was talking about the situation or whatever, and we just see a situation that could be escalating with a roommate situation that she has, and we just don't want to see no bad outcome. Okay, so I had talked to her earlier, my biological sister, and I had mentioned, that I would send her this message, and she got the message. She said she wasn't going to call back at first, but she ended up kind of going outside. So it just seems like she's the type of person, she's kind of in a bad mood. Um at least when talking to me. See, and that's another thing y'all don't realize about narcissists. They switch up depending on the supply source. Um and I'm not a main supply source for her. So you got to remember this when you're dealing with someone and they behaving like a sociopath or a narcissist. Um, just cold blooded. I mean, people just cold blooded, y'all. So when they're behaving like this, you got to also look at what you're going through. And a lot of times when they're behaving like this, you're still trying to people please. But I'm not a major supply source. I'm not paying her bills. She doesn't live with me. And so a lot of times, some narcissists, not all, they talk to people according to what they're doing for them. So some narcissists and sociopaths, they will act and talk to you a little nicer, at least for a while. Maybe not permanently, if you're giving them money and cars and supplying them with a place to stay. And what they will do is the people that don't supply them with anything, like me, I'm not supplying her with a house and money and stuff like this. They may talk more mean to you or be more of their real selves. So with some narcissists, to really gain their kind side, you got to be paying their bills. And if they're really mean and that's who they are, that's only going to work for a while. Yeah, they're going to be kind for a while because you're paying their bills. So, for an example, for one, if I had a mental problem, I'm talking about that other kind of mental problem, the one that ain't in the DSM, the too nice mental problem, I would be blinded and I wouldn't be able to see it for what it is. I wouldn't use logic. Because remember, sometimes when you have certain mental disorders, that's something that's taken away for a while is your logic. So if you have an anger problem due to your narcissism, or you're a sociopath, or you're a psychopath and you have an anger problem, one of the things that's missing for you is logical thinking. So you have a mental problem. But remember, you can be too nice and have a mental problem. So, okay, it goes through this escalation. The real sis thing, she didn't want to be called that. Now she don't want to be called by her name. She prefers to be called the name that I call her for short. But like I pointed out to her, I do call her by her full first name here and there. I just started, because she did the real sis thing, I started calling her by her first name kind of more because I want to have a serious relationship with her. And I don't know what she's going through. So I just didn't want to keep offending this woman is what I didn't want to do. Now, she don't care about offending me because that's why she telling me don't call her real sis, don't call her by her name, her first name. She doesn't care about offending me. And this is the part where, because I don't have that mental problem, that too nice empath mental problem, this is where I'm able to lose feelings for people. Not like a discard. I may never discard her. I may never go full no contact. However, because I don't have that too nicey nice mental problem that they can't diagnose you with. She doesn't want to be called real sis. She doesn't want to be called by her first name. So I would have to be seriously ill and sick in the freaking mind. My mind would have to be gone, y'all, to even call her sister anymore. Do you see what I mean? So if I continue to call her sister or sis or sister, if I continue to call her either one of those labels after she's already told me to not call her real sis and also acknowledge she don't even really want me calling her by her first name that my own mother and our mother named her. So, and if I call her sis, real sis, sister, if I call her any of these names anymore going forward, she's going to think I'm crazy. She's going to think I have a fucking mental problem. Do you get this? So, the Lord likes intentions. The Lord don't like her intentions. He don't like her moves. It's evil. He don't like that shit. That much I do know. The Lord don't like you, and I went over this in the Living with the Spiritual Warfare when I disagreed with Robert Greene's concept of not showing gratitude in one of his 48 laws of power, whatever law of power where he mentions don't show gratitude when people are nice to you. That's actually how she's acting. So that's real bad. And the Lord don't like that type of stuff. So in the karma world and dharma world, I'm in the best position. If I want to enter any good afterlife or if I want to receive any kind of good luck or good blessings, I'm in the right position, not her. The asshole is never in the right position. Okay, just remember that. So I'm out at a restaurant. My relatives were both at work. So I was out. My other relative doesn't live here anymore, but he was at work also, but he lives on another part of the town. So I'm speaking of who was supposed to come home. So I'm in this restaurant. I make this phone call to my biological sister and we're talking. And that's when we had this conversation I just told you about. So I just want to let you know what happened during the conversation. So while I'm on the phone with her, one of my good friends that always called me sister, by the way, this particular lady I've known since I was in my, I would say, gosh, like mid 20s, somewhere like that. We've known each other a very, very long time. So she has 4 children. She has 2 sons and 2 daughters, and I knew all of her children. And so while I'm on this phone conversation, this is my good luck, y'all. This is the universe showing me good job. Okay, so while I'm on this conversation with my biological sister, he comes in. And I've been wanting this mentor for my youngest son, okay, that's a teenager. So I've been wanting this mentor, finding the right mentor, and here the Lord just guides this gentleman in here. And I've been knowing him since he was very young. When he was like a teen, I know his mom, and like I said, coincidentally, his mom always called me sister. Now, she's not my biological sister, but she called me sis sister, just a kind gesture. No different than when somebody's at the church or masjid or any other religious organization and they call each other sister and brother. Okay, you know that just because somebody calls you sister and brother, that doesn't mean that that's your biological relative. We understand that. So I had this kind of, my biological sister was patiently waiting on the phone and she listened to the interaction I had with the gentleman about the mentor. And I was telling my sister, excuse me, he just came in. And so I exchanged phone numbers with him. He sent me nice texts. So we're going to get my son set up and, get him on this road. Mentors are really good if you have the right mentor. And fortunately, this will be seeming to be a good mentor because look at how long I've known him. I've known him since he was young. Okay. So it was just such a blessing. So that's how the universe worked for me because I'm not displaying this asshole behavior. So what I will get when you do something from the for real kindness of your heart and you got the really right intentions, the right intentions, I mean, or really having right intentions, excuse me if I messed up that language there, then the universe is just going to give it right back to you. And because, I lost my relative and stuff, I think the Lord was like taking it easy on me because I do have feelings. Um, my biological sister, she never apologized. I mean, you can tell when you're kind of hurting someone because of, especially when I said, oh, well, it's okay for someone else that's not your sister to call you by your first name and not your blood sister. Um, she has to know that that would hurt someone's feelings, but she does lack empathy. That's something that she lacks. She does lack that. She just does. Okay. I'm not going to get too much into the other things, but that's definitely, I'm not going to say she don't have any empathy. I'm just going to say she lacks it. I have to say that because of the way she's treating me on that phone call. So I'm going to mention this titles. Okay. I actually had a relative, and I'm strict on titles, y'all. Right? I'm strict on titles. So what I mean by that is if I'm married, okay, and my husband started calling his side chick his wife and stopped calling me wifey or wife, and he just called his side chick wife, because he's taking the title, the verbal title of wife, I wouldn't care if we was legally married on paper. I would get rid of his ass because I don't have a mental problem. I wouldn't care that he said, but baby, we still married on paper. And most of the time, if a man is going to stop calling you his wife, he also ain't calling you baby. And even if he called me baby as like a mind trick, instead of calling me his wife, while I heard all kind of messages that he was leaving, while I got my ear hustling thing to the door, I'm hearing messages of him talking to the side chick. Call your husband back now. This is what he's saying to the side chick. And then the side chick calls back and I could hear her say, this your wife. I don't care about the paperwork. I would be done. Because he's done because he's taking my title away. And I'm the same way with family. So I had a relative and we were into it. And actually, it was my son, y'all. My son. It was. I'm not going to just say a relative in this case. I'll give you more detail. And he stopped doing it, but he went through this phase where he was angry. He was mad because I wasn't giving him what he wanted. And he went through this phase and he would speak to me and he stopped saying mom. He got over that. But during the couple of months he did it, it didn't go on very long, but I told him, you address me as mom. But that was his way of showing his anger. He doesn't do it anymore. If he calls me or sends me a message, that's the first thing he says is mom. And the reason is because when he took my title and he stopped calling me mom, I was no longer a mom. He slept outside, y'all. So he was over there in the trees and the bushes with his big ass coat. Because I'm not your mama, right? So get it right with the squirrels. And he was a runaway and kept leaving and coming back. I went through this in other videos where I went through this issue with two of my sons. It's all over with now. They're both doing very well. They're working, no longer runaways. Ain't nobody mad and not calling me mom. I just got a message from that particular son today, addressing me as mom. That's the first thing he usually says. Mom, did you get the call? Is this going on? So we're on good terms as far as the communication. He's moved out, but I'm just giving you examples of how I do things. So titles mean a lot to me, and I'm the type, because I don't have a mental problem, this mental problem, okay? Because I don't have that, I don't do stuff without the title. So if I'm hired at a company and they hire me in as a manager and they continue to call me a manager and they tell me I have no control of anything, well, why am I your manager then? Give me another title. Because obviously, if I can't tell nobody what to do, if I can't organize the team, if you're telling me I don't have a team and you just calling me manager, did you just hire me on some affirmative action shit? Do you need a certain amount of diversity in here? Why the fuck am I here? That's how I would feel about it. And you should do the same. Because when you react and understand that you have a title, and if you don't have that title, you shouldn't be doing the stuff, that means you ain't got a mental problem. So what I'm doing is I'm telling you about the other mental problem that they won't tell you about. And y'all, don't take offense to this. It begins with the Bible. When all that love your enemies, that was taken way out of control to the point where you can just tell when somebody's read that part of the Bible and the mental problem they develop because of that passage or scripture that they read. Love your enemies. I watched a woman. This particular man was a head gang member, murdered her son, and y'all probably seen this case too. It was a black woman, and she has a mental problem, and she has the same mental problem that I'm talking about. Too nicey. She goes to the prison, has a meeting, accepts the forgiveness of the man that murdered her son. But this is the problem with this. Okay, you could say, well, what's wrong with that? She can't function or move on without forgiveness. It's a lot wrong with it, because this particular head gang member, he pretty much runs the prison. And he's on video, on documentaries, saying how he is a predator and how he pulls these moves on the new inmates that are scary, how he pulls them into another cell that's empty, scares them, chokes them up, grabs them up. It's either they give him head jobs. He can you imagine your son or nephew or cousin going to prison and they're in there and they meet this big, tall head gang member and they pull your male relative in a cell and make your relative suck his dick? And this black woman knew this shit. She saw the documentary of all the wicked shit that this man is doing in prison. So the woman has a serious fucking mental problem. She hugged up on, accepted the apology of a cold-hearted, cruel sociopath or psychopath that not only killed her son, but he continues to torture people in the fucking prison. Now, she spent all that energy forgiving him and hugging him. He was fine as hell, y'all. He was a good looking man. I mean, he's a head gang member. And that's why her ass was there, y'all. She liked that motherfucker was fine, built, and tall. And he had a nice voice. He didn't show a lot of emotions. He was calm, not overreacting, because he's a goddamn psychopath. So he's good at that. And she probably had some angry ass abusers in her life. So she liked the way he rolled. He was clean as fuck. He had some pretty tattoos. And that's why her ass was at that prison. She has a mental problem. But see, I don't have a mental problem because I could see why the fuck she's there. Now, if he wasn't doing all of that other shit in prison, this inmate that she was forgiving, this head gang member, if he wasn't raping men, making men suck their dick, beating on them, having other people rape them and beat on them over money collections, making men boys, that's where a bunch of inmates that are predators, they all fucking the same man every day, and stuff like that. So if he wasn't doing all of that and he actually had changed his life, killed her son on accident, I could see forgiving him and going to the meeting, maybe, since he got in the gang life when he was young. I could see that. But still, the tight hug she gave him, she got a fucking mental problem. Now, I've seen other videos where people forgive people that have murdered their family, and they do go meet with them, they talk to them, but they don't hug them. You will never see them hug the killer before they leave, because the murderer does not deserve the hug. And those particular inmates in those cases changed their life and had for real remorse. Like they couldn't even come to the meeting without crying. A lot of times these were men that actually turned out to be empaths, or women that turned out to be empaths, and they did the murder when they were very, very young, like no older than 20 years old. And some of them got heavily in their religion. So say you're going to a prison and you're going to forgive someone and they're heavily into Islam, they're heavily into Christianity, like they actually changed their life in there, and you forgive them, you might want to give that person a hug. But that particular black woman, and I'm not saying nothing against black women, I'm just telling you the race, and I'm telling you she had a fucking mental problem, the one that kissed the ass of the head gang member that basically ran that damn prison. And like I said, he was handsome as hell, beauty-wise. I mean, he was a good-looking man. And like I said, that's why her ass was there. She knew it and I knew it. She wanted to hug up on that big, nice-looking, caramel-complected, fine-ass man. But he's not fine inside. That's a wicked-ass demon she hugged. And, you know, her son that was murdered by that head gang member, it was a drug deal gone bad, and her son was on drugs. And so it's almost like she felt like her son was asking for it because he was on drugs. However, she does have a mental problem. Because when she went up there to forgive that head gang member for murdering her son, her ass also knew the other shit he was doing. She had to have known about it because I knew about it because I watched the video. And he was, you know, telling the story in the documentary on how he do these men that come up in there because they scared as hell of him. A lot of these men that come in prison, they wasn't raised in the gang. They was raised by their mother, father. Some of them come from single parent home and 2-parent homes, and they ain't never seen no demon like him. And he's big and tall, so they real scary. And he described how he gets in their face, chokes them up. He's real strong and built, and he scares the shit out of them to where they do whatever he say. They don't want to die. So they suck his dick, give him money. They toot their booty up. They do whatever for him because they scared as fuck. This man can really fight. They know that fighting him, they gonna lose it. And they know that he got other people working for him in that prison. But he just ain't met the wrong nut yet. Right? He just ain't met that nut yet. Because some people, and you know what? I'm going to take that back. He ain't met somebody that really stood up for themselves, that wild out. That's not a nut. If he keep bringing men in that empty cell, telling them suck my dick and shanking them up like that and choking them, and finally This little short guy comes in prison and he think he gonna do another one like this, and this short guy beat the brakes off him and kills him on accident. That man's not a nut. So I apologize. That wouldn't be a nut. Who the nut is this head gang member that's torturing people. And this black woman that came up to the prison, she knew that shit. She knew that. But she has a mental problem. See what I'm saying? And you could tell she knows about the scripture, love your enemies. She knows about that scripture. And because of that scripture, she took it too far and she's messed up in the mind. She just is. That's the bottom line. It's no other way to look at it. And I think it's only fair because this is advanced insight. I think it's only fair to explain this to you. And so you know the truth and because this is why I'm explaining it to you. Because in Matthew 5:43, like I said, I know for a fact this sister knows about the scripture. She just does. Because you don't want to have this mental problem. You just don't want to have this mental problem. And I want you to understand that other narcissistic people, narcissists and sociopaths and psychopaths, when you are overly nice, they know that you're sick. They view it as a mental problem. That's why a lot of times, if you look back in your past, when you was real nice to narcissists, remember this, y'all, and they kept calling you crazy, you couldn't figure out why they called you crazy. You was like, wow, I just loaned him or her my car, but they're calling me crazy. Because they think you got a mental problem because the last car you loaned them, they wrecked the shit. So they think you crazy when you keep loaning them your vehicles. They think you crazy because they know you got to go to work and it's going to be the second or third job you done lost because you keep letting narcissists use your car. Now, if you learn from the situation and stop doing the mess, you don't have a mental problem. And this is real crucial that you understand this because this particular mental problem, this too nicey nice disorder, can't no psychologist diagnose you with. There's no name for this disorder. It's no name for it. But it is a mental problem. So my biological sister, she told me, asked me, why did I call her real sis? When I called her by her name, her government legal name that I do call her periodically, I call her by the short version of it most of the time. But like I said, it was an attempt to do right by her. If I continue, and keep this in mind, she's not referring to me as sis either. Okay, I want to point that out. So she's asking me, why did I call her real sis? Then she asked me not to call her by her first name. Okay, you got to notice this pattern. And she's also not exchanging and calling me sis. So I would be sick in the mind and I would have a mental problem to continue to address her verbally as sis. Now, I'm not no fucking coward. So what I'm not going to let her do is let her say I can't use her first name and my mama named her that. I can call her by her government name. Actually, you can't make me call you a nickname. What I have a right to call you is what is on your damn birth certificate. So I'm not no fucking coward. However, she'd rather be called by the name I usually call her. However, I will call her by what my mama named her. Because my mama didn't raise me as a freaking coward. My mom did not raise or give birth to a bitch. Okay, I'm not fucking stupid and I'm not like coward material. So, that's another thing too. You got to show people you don't have a mental problem by never let somebody take something from you that you have a right to do. My sons, if they choose to call their brothers by his first name and they got the same mama and daddy, they have a right to. My son bet not, if I'm dead and gone, let one of his brothers tell him, you can't call me by my first name. And I'm all of they mama. Don't let nobody punk you. However, what definitely will be removed because I don't have a mental problem is the cis word. And y'all, this is going to have a part 2 to it. So I apologize, but I am going to do a part 2 because this video is getting ready to end automatically. And so I want you to tune in for part 2 because I have more to say about this issue, about your mental disorder or problem and the narcissist. And it is a mental problem that you can stop and you can control. You're in full control of this mental problem. I don't even think for this particular issue, because you're hearing this video, I think most of